Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme of bands with short names, looking at bands who only have 4 or less characters in their name. Today we're going to be looking at VOLA, the track 24 Light Years. We've had VOLA on the channel before, and if I remember correctly, I've enjoyed them. So I'm always eager to check out more of them. Let's see what they're doing today with 24 Light Years. Yeah, so it's a little off-putting there with the accent at the beginning of the phrase, the 8-beat phrase, being on the and of one. Yeah, it's delayed just a hair bit there. It really feels like it doesn't even want to continue. Feels like it'd rather stretch out what it was doing. Really interesting concepts. Interesting production on the vocal, but I like the harmony. It's got a nice robotic element to it. Carrying on this melody from the vocals to the guitar. Constant synth in the background pushing us forward. There's a really interesting tug of war going on here. The reluctancy to move on at the beginning of the phrase, but the consistent push forward in both the melodic drum work and the synth in the backgrounds. Yeah, so we have a nice emphasis on 1 and 3 now from our snare. Almost as if they had found stability, and we have this nice, consistent accent pattern.
There's an echo that seems to live on. 24 footprints obtained. I could leave this house, but I won't. There's an echo that seems to live on. 24 footprints.
It's like a choir also behind the vocals. Yeah, all right. So we got some pretty good djenty pop here. Uh, got those nice djenty grooves that we love. We actually have a heavier section in here in the bridge, but for the most part, this explores more poppy sensibilities, including the catchy hooks, the mostly palatable ideas throughout most of it, heavy emphasis on synth, and honestly, this is gonna be kind of weird. It's a simplistic composition, which I think is not the words I would typically utilize here, but it is one semi complex idea played a lot. So the complexity of the overall song kind of dips down a bit, but if we look at one specific two bar phrase in a vacuum, we'll find a bit of complexity there. Um, and I think this is what I like about VOLA, if I'm remembering some of their other tracks, is that they do a very presentable, palatable style of djent. Um, Unfortunately, this song kind of bounced off of me a little bit based off of primarily the repetition of it. I think there's an interesting story through the repetition. I think I'll be able to appreciate it from a distance. But as far as wanting to listen to more Vola, I don't think this is one of the tracks I would come back to if I were to choose a song on my own. Let's dig into some of the stuff though that's going on here. Primarily, I want to look at our A and B section. There is a lot of forward momentum, whether it's the more melodic drumming style that we hear constantly moving between all the different parts of the drum kit. I really like how it doesn't just sit there on a typical, eighth notes on a hi-hat, accents delineated between the snare and the bass kick, and then having occasional fills or other uses of the rest of the cymbals sparingly. It kind of moves towards, like I said, a melodic style where there is definitely a tempo being kept, but it's more about how the drums can add to the atmosphere of the section that they're playing in. I'm a huge fan of this type of drumming. I love it here. I do wish there was just a hair bit more variety to it, but I think that's just my sensibilities coming in, providing a bit of a subjective take on it. I just found that by the end of the track, I was a bit, well, by the end of the first half of the track, I was a bit bored with what the drums were doing, and we did hear some variety on the back half, which again I think work thematically, but presented a less interesting drumming technique or drumming pattern to the drums. Not a bad thing at all. I think everything that happens in this track is subservient to the song itself. It just doesn't catch my ear because of that. Um, the guitars are layered on top of that with some sparse concepts, little bits of ornamental stuff here and there. And we also have a synth in the background that is just playing these moving, constant eighth notes, I think it was, just kind of swirling around, doing these rises and drops. Just this constant forward momentum, though. The guitars do come in with these full chords, with these djenty rhythms that we originally had just single notes on, if I remember correctly, in our verse. We come into full chords in our chorus, and that really provides some of the extra width and meat that the chorus has, which makes it feel punchier and larger than our verse. I want to read into this the smaller, sparser uh, verse towards the larger, fuller chorus, but it's such a typical way of composing a lot of modern music, especially in the realm of rock and metal. Well, I should say rock and metal in the mainstream world. But even outside of that, just in the mainstream style though, more palatability is very popular. I mean, metalcore pretty much does this in every track. Um, but there's so much intentionality to some of the musical components that I want to read into this, and I think when we hit the lyrics, we might touch on something that fits this back and forth here. Now, I had mentioned that there is a tug of war, a push and pull throughout this song, and it's interesting because at the beginning, I really felt a lean back, a lethargy, a reluctance to progress forward. And all of that comes from our drumming, which is rather energetic and forward momentum, but doesn't want to restart. In fact, it took me a couple of bars to realize what was going on there, in that it's a 2 bar idea. And at the beginning of the first bar, we don't have an accent on beat 1. We have a semi-accent on the and of 1. And so it comes in just a bit delayed, just a bit late. And it's not a full accent like we would eventually hear on the downbeat of 1 of the second bar. And it doesn't have the same intentionality and impact as we'll hear in the second half of the track when we have that accented 1 and 3 on the snare. It feels a bit less impactful, maybe even accidental. Not that he's accidentally hitting the snare, but my feeling out of it is that whatever this drum pattern is supposed to represent, there's this accidental component to it. Almost like you're walking normally and then you trip. You didn't mean to trip, but the trip is definitely a highlight of the walking. It was the one thing that kind of stood out amongst the rest of it. Weird analogy. I hope you follow through on that one, though. Um, that's what it feels like, though. It's sort of this half accent. It's not quite as powerful as the rest, but it does create a moment of change, and especially at a moment where I think most listeners would be a bit confused. It's really difficult to get a feel for the groove when we don't have a strong accent pattern, and we're expecting that downbeat on 1, and we don't get it. And we kind of get this half accent just a hair afterwards, which feels a bit. That was loud. I don't know if you guys heard that. That was very loud lightning. It must have been, jeez, right nearby. It is still rumbling. All right. uh, yeah, it comes in just after the beat. It's delayed. It's not as impactful. It just feels like someone stumbling around, which I guess is a nice callback to the tripping analogy I had earlier. But it's surrounded by all this movement, the constant tom work in the drums, the constant eighth note idea in the synth, the groove of the Djenty chugging guitars. It all feels like it wants to push forward, but there's this one aspect that really pulls back, and that's that tug of war I was talking about. And I'm curious if we'll see anything about that in the lyrical themes. Um, but to segue out of that, we have a strong juxtaposition to this in the back half of the track. We revisit a lot of the same ideas, chords, moving synth work, momentous drumming, catchy hooks in the back half as we enter our bridge and eventually the final section, which I think was a repeat of the chorus, with one pretty big difference. That difference being the drums. We've lost that. Well, now that I think about it, it's kind of like meandering, right? The toms are sort of constantly played. It's not like we're moving from the high toms to low toms. It's more of a melodic take on it. I wonder if there was any like melodic direction to it. I got to go back and listen. Anyways, the idea here though is that it's more structured. We have an accent on 1 and 3 every time. There is consistency, rigidity, there is impact to it. It's also something you can depend upon. You can eventually come around to understanding the pattern that we have in the opening, but at the beginning it's odd. It's not what we're expecting, and it's difficult to get a read on immediately. It is a bit unreliable. And here we have something that is just constant. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's got this strong front of the bar accent, the 1 and the 3 instead of the 2 and the 4. and it's driving forward. It has purpose. It knows where it's going. It has direction. And it's paired with the choir coming in with a wider harmony on the vocals. I don't think the guitars changed at all. I don't remember hearing the synth here, so I can't comment on that. It was probably still doing that constant moving idea. Anyways, the thing is that this is the fullest, most intentful aspect of the track, and it almost feels as if whatever was meandering or lost, whatever any of that was supposed to indicate, has now found a renewed purpose in life. And that is what the ending of this track feels like. It is finding that purpose, knowing what you're supposed to do, where you're supposed to be, and taking the steps to work towards that or to utilize this new purpose to achieve a new goal. It is a really nice juxtaposition there that allows the song to feel like growth, which I think is what we're getting at here in totality. I'm going to hit some lyrics here, see what's going on there. I really expect to see some ideas of growth, though, or improvement, or just not feeling lost. Anything along those lines. So let's hit that, see what's going on. Lyrically, the song seems to be about moving on away from a past relationship. It doesn't exactly say what the relationship is. It could have been familiar, could have been romantic, could have been anything. But it's over. The relationship is gone, and this person is left with a lot of isolation. They feel lonely, there's sorrow to it. The verse says, "All that I need is to find you, gray swarms of ash blocking my view, sounds from your last celebration, sparkling and naive conversation." Sitting here with this gray swarm of ash as a sort of, it's a hurdle of some sort. It's blocking their view, which is what they say, but it immediately moves into a memory. And it's almost as if talking about the haziness of remembering things. The chorus says, "I could leave this house, but I won't." There's an echo that seems to live on. 24 footprints obtained, 24 light years remain. The idea that this house is a representation of their old relationship. It could be that they both lived here for a while and there's still a lot of keepsakes left over. To leave the house is to move on, and they don't want to. However, it seems that they are making uh, progress towards doing so. The 24 footprints obtained, 24 light years remain. I read that as saying that I've made 24 footprints. I've taken 24 steps, but there is a ton of distance left to cover. I have literally just started this journey. I don't remember how far a light year is, but it is a massive distance. And to have 24 of those massive distances compared to the 24 steps you have made, I think showcases very well just how monumental of a task this person is attempting to undertake. The bridge, I think, is the first time that we really see this concept of pressing forward. It says, "Move this table, change this label. Is there something new? Bleach this surface, pale and nervous. Are you lonely too?" I'm not 100% sure what the "are you lonely too" aspect is, unless it's sort of just a rhetorical question. I'm lonely without you. Are you lonely without me? Sort of that little bit of regression back to it, but there's still this process of moving forward. If the house is representative of the old relationship, any change to it, cleaning up of the cobwebs is, well, it's doing the hard work to pressing forward. Just changing things around allows the house to feel less like the old and more like something new, pushing forward. Even changing a table, moving where a table is placed, makes you remember less about the old relationship. Um, and then, of course, we hit our final chorus, which I think is this there's a stability to it. It is, there's direction, there's understanding. This is how life is now. I'm taking the steps to press forward. It's a huge journey, but I'm not going to be in shambles anymore, which is what I think the hesitant accent at the repeat of the phrase at the beginning of the track was supposed to represent. A constantly taking missteps, not knowing how to push forward, that kind of deal, feeling unbalanced. All the stuff that could easily represent somebody having just come out of a relationship and not knowing what to do with their life or not knowing how to deal with it. Anyways, those are my thoughts. VOLA's 24 light years. I think everything works together rather well here. And like I said, I appreciate it more from a distance. Everything works together exceptionally well from an artistic angle. Musically, though, I just kind of wish there was a little bit more here to hook me in. However, it's a fantastic palatable song. It's got a nice hook to it, so it's not all bad. What are your thoughts, though? Let me know your comments, perspectives, and opinions down in the comment section. Above that, in the description box, you can find a link to Linktree. It'll take you to this menu right here. You can find my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could like, subscribe, and ring the bell, I greatly appreciate all three. We have a special selection coming up next. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. As usual, we're going to wrap this week up exploring the three styles of music, the three themes of music that we always do. We're going to wrap up this short band stuff. We're going to look at special selection and a creator request. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.